Well, I started off writing children's books, then I started trying to write novels, and I got sidetracked into writing for children's television. So that was the first kind of drama of any kind, the first scripts of any kind I wrote. That was a very grim experience, and I vowed after that never ever to do any more television. That felt like being a little barnacle of art attached to this great oil tanker of commerce. I mean, you had no control at all. I was just the machine that produced the words. I think what's the big difference? I hugely enjoyed writing the one stage play I've written, which is Polar Bears at the Donmar Warehouse. I enjoyed every single aspect of it. I enjoyed working with other people. I enjoyed working with, particularly working with actors. I think actors get a very bad reputation, but they are the most wonderful people, with very few exceptions. They do the silliest thing imaginable, which is dressing up and pretending to be other people, but they do it with the same kind of commitment that people fly planes or do heart surgery. Because if you get it wrong in front of 400 people, it's extremely painful. And I've been trying to write plays since then to recover that experience. And it's taken me a long time to realise that at heart, I don't really have what it takes to be a playwright, I don't think. I mean, I could change my mind completely next week. There's something deep in plays about it's about action, it's about drama, it's people wanting things to happen, people trying to make things happen, and people being prevented from making things happen. It's all about interaction, it's just about interaction. When I'm writing novels, or the few short stories I've written, it's never really about action. For me, the overarching plot is a kind of superstructure on which I stick all the other stuff that I really, really like. I like the voices inside people's heads. I like furniture. I like landscapes. I like people's odd habits. I like what they're wearing. I like hairstyles and glasses and the detritus of daily life, and that fascinates me. Of course, it just doesn't exist on the stage. That's someone else's job on the stage. I'm not really disciplined at all. It looks like that from the outside because I'm very careful not to let any half-baked rubbish leave the front door. I start many, many things. Luckily, I have people, notably my wife, who reads everything that I've written, and she remains the one person who will tell me when I've written something that's simply not working. So I cull almost everything before it even gets to the front door. So by the time it comes out the front door, I hope it does look quite efficient. And it gives the impression I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know what I was doing. And the process always starts with kind of stumbling around in the dark. There have been pieces of writing that have started as... I mean, I can think of pieces of writing which started as a poem and then became a play and then possibly a novel and then a short story in the end. And it took years for it to perform that. It's like something stuck in the great Pacific Drift, going round and round and round until it finally finds landfall somewhere. I mean, two things which I don't do anymore, which I think have been extremely useful when it comes to writing fiction. One is writing books for children. You have to learn not to indulge yourself at any point, because children their attention will wander. And everything has to be about the reader. There's no point in which you can indulge yourself and say, I will assume you're listening to me, so let me talk about myself for a while. You have to think about the reader all the time. And working in television, the worst aspect of it was also ironically the most useful aspect of it. Having had to rewrite scripts over and over, not always or indeed often for good reasons, often because one of the producers had decided they wanted to do something entirely different with this episode of a show. So you'll be sent off to chuck it away and start again. Now, I think if you stay in television and you have too much of that experience, it's soul-destroying, and then you start to preempt that process by not putting enough of yourself into each draft because you know it'll get savaged. But I think I pulled out in time so that I was just hardened enough to be used to the possibility of throwing something away and starting again, and that's quite good to hang on to. That, for me, in a sense, is probably the distinction between what I think of as a literary novel and, let's just say, a non-literary novel. If I pick up, irrespective of what genre it comes from, it could be a literary book. It could be about, nice middle-class people on holiday. But if I pick it up and if I run my eye down the page and it doesn't have, the book itself does not have some kind of linguistic character to it, then I'm not really interested. The book has to be aware of its own language. It has to enjoy itself. It has to enjoy the way it's speaking. It has to somehow perform to me. And if it's just a mechanism built of words to get a story across, then I'm just not interested. I think I've experienced both ends of that spectrum. A Curious Incident was, I think, adopted by so many people around the world. Irrespective of the quality of the book, it wasn't bedded into the English language in the way that most novels are. There was something very clear and clean about it. And I think, and I've talked to translators about this, they felt they could lift it out of the English language and move it sideways and drop it into another language without losing something really essential. And I think it's quite rare when you can say that about a book, but I think it probably was true about Curious. And the only discussions I had with translators were about tiny factual details. I had a long I remember I had to take photographs of different types of forks when I was talking to a translator, and I can't remember where it was now, whether it was Czechoslovakia or Russia. And they were saying, what size is the fork? What is the dog killed with? Is it a fork like that, or is it a fork like that? Because we use the same word. So I had to send them a picture of a fork like that to explain it. Now, the very opposite was when I was working, The Red House, the last novel I wrote, which is very, very embedded in the English language. Very short sentences, lots of lists, lots of slightly stream of consciousness pieces. You often don't quite know who's talking. It might move from someone's mind into the book they're reading and then somewhere else in the room. And I know that was hard for translators, having talked to them about it. Well, I do teach writing at least once a year for the Haddon Foundation, and I hugely enjoy it. The writing is only ever a small part of that. I mean, it's partly about having a relationship with people and you're trying to teach them to write, but you're teaching them lots of other things at the same time. You're getting to know each other. Wonderful things happen, and they're not always about the words on the paper. Can you teach them what good writing is? No, because good writing is always goes beyond your expectations. Good writing is always a surprise, and no one writes really good writing by following all the rules. You can give people lots of rules, and that's really helpful for them to know the rules, but the people who write really well will go away and break some of them. On the other hand, you can always tell people how to improve bad writing. And I've never quite understood those two. Here's a good example. I was doing teaching an Avon course years ago with a friend of mine, Catherine Hayman, Australian novelist. And we were sitting at either ends of a long lawn at Lumbank, that's it, in the Avon Centre, in the evening. And one of the students had written a poem. And she went to one end of the lawn and spoke to me and said, "What do you think of this, man?" And I read through it, and I read it and I said, "It's great, but you need to cut that line there." And she said, "Why?" I said, "I don't know. It's a bit signposty. It tries to sum up the rest of the poem. Just cut that out and it'll be great." And she said, "Okay." She wandered up to the other end of the lawn, obviously thinking that I was talking rubbish, and she showed it to Catherine. I could see this about 50 yards away, and I could see Catherine going, "Oh, it's pretty good, but I think I'd get rid of this line here." And I saw her look up and look down the lawn as if we'd had some secret radio contact. And she suddenly realised that teachers weren't just making it up as they went along. We both knew objectively that that's how you improve that poem. And there was kind of no question about that whatsoever. But how do you write a good poem? That is really hard to articulate.